Marvel has created origin stories that have become ingrained in pop culture. Everybody knows them. But they have also come up with some origins that have caused more confusion than anything else, like how someone can be their own grandfather. Here are just a few Marvel origins we still don't understand, or they just give me a massive headache. In the MCU, Vision's origin is honestly pretty easy to follow. Can't say the same for whatever is happening in the comics. In the comics, Vision came from the original Human Torch, aka the first artificial man ever created, and Ultron was responsible for constructing Vision. It was later discovered that the Human Torch Ultron got his hands on wasn't the original, it was a temporal replica that was generated using the Forever Crystal. Because of this, Vision wouldn't activate, and Ultron was forced to bring in the OG Human Torch's creator into the mix, forcing him to fix Vision. The brain of Wonder Man was used to do that, so he is the Human Torch and Wonder Man, while also not truly being either, so there you go. Next is the Scarlet Witch and Quicksilver, because they just can't seem to catch a break. So when it comes to their origins, and no matter which one you look at, there are still a million questions. So for the longest time, Scarlet Witch and Quicksilver were the children of Magneto. His wife Magda had been pregnant with twins when she disappeared, and it's not hard to believe that Magneto, one of the most powerful mutants alive, would be the father of a powerful witch and speedster. Now, that origin has been retconned, something many Marvel readers hate, but even if it wasn't, there are still some questions I need answered. Like, why were Magda's twins delivered by an evolved cow? Why was that the choice? Now that this origin has been retconned, who and where are the twins that Magda gave birth to? The current story with Wanda and Pietro is that they were the children of Natalia, the sister of the couple that ended up caring for the twins. The High Evolutionary kidnapped the twins from this couple and experimented on them, making them appear as regular mutants. Then they were returned. This is still pretty new for an origin. For decades, Wanda and Pietro were Magneto's kids, so it's taking some getting used to. At least Magneto still sees them as his children, even if it's not by blood. Northstar's life is so wild, it's almost like they used a random job generator and just like ran with it. The guy has joined the circus, a Quebec separatist group, Alpha Flight, which is Canada's super team, and he's an Olympic skiing champion. He is also a twin. However, he didn't find that out until much later in life, because when they were children, their parents got into a crash and passed on. They were separated, and Northstar ended up being adopted, only for his adoptive parents to also pass in an accident. And at that point, I would personally start asking questions. Someone has to have it out for you. In adulthood, the twins were reunited, and it was so nice, but then they were contacted by Loki, who told them that they were part elf, so they spent some time thinking that they were elves. It wasn't true though. Loki lied, and that's that. Forever Man is maybe the first mutant to ever exist, and yet he doesn't seem to have made any mark on the Marvel fandom. Don't get me wrong, Forever Man has done a lot of stuff, but for a guy that has had since the beginning of time, he really hasn't amassed a large following. Forever Man, whose mutant power is regeneration. If he passes, he just comes back to life as a child, allegedly with no memories of his past lives. However, that might not be true anymore. He claims to have had 10,000 names in his lifetime. Apparently, his memories were reawakened after a particularly grueling passing. Then he met the Avengers, and when they couldn't help him stop his mutant ability, he flew himself into the sun. But that only caused him to be stuck in a constant resurrection cycle until he exploded back to Earth as a kid again, and we don't really know if he remembers who he is after that point, because we don't really see him again. I believe his last appearance was Avengers 218 from 1982. Is he still around? He should be. As long as the Earth spins, he's around. We actually don't really know where he even came from. My favorite thing he ever did though, in one of his lifetimes, he accidentally almost made the entire United States country disappear when he tried erasing Captain America from existence. Have you ever wanted to read about an elf with lots of firepower and almost no consistent backstory? Then boy, do I have the character for you. His name is Melf, M-E-L-F, but his alias is Elf with a weapon, and that's it. That's what he is. It seems that he is part of a bigger group, elves with weapons. We don't know where he's from officially, but the elves are supposed to be agents for the Tribunals, a force dedicated to preserving order in the universe. Melf was a weird guy and would go around offing random people, and he was never caught. He was only stopped because he was run over by a truck. His nephew, Ralph, then took up his undisclosed mission. However, if he was working for the Tribunals, then and maybe his victims weren't random, and wouldn't that be a great and easy to follow explanation? So of course that was retconned. Doctor Strange claims that the tribunals were fake, and we are once again back to wondering why the elves even exist. Retcons and identity theft have led to quite a confusing backstory for Zorn. Zorn's debut was in New X-Men Annual 2001, and at the end he was revealed to be Magneto in disguise. Only he wasn't. Later it was revealed that it was actually Zorn, pretending to be Magneto, pretending to be Zorn. And Zorn is being controlled by someone named Sublime to foster mutant hatred in the world. At the end of the Magneto identity theft fight, Zorn dies, but not really. His body is done for, but his essence was still around through his connection to Sublime, so he came back. The creator of Zorn in 2001 always intended for Zorn to be Magneto, actually Magneto, so when you read that story, there are hints to it the whole way through. It was because the editors liked Zorn's character and Marvel wanted Magneto alive so they could use him again that the confusing aspect of his story was born. Zorn also has a twin brother with very similar powers to him, so sometimes Zorn returns, but it's Zorn 2. What is it with Marvel and twins? Up next, Cable, or Nathan Summers, because what's even going on there? He is the son of Cyclops and Jean Grey, but his birth was kind of orchestrated by Mr. Sinister after he discovered that the two X-Men would produce a super powerful offspring if given the chance. Sinister wanted to use this offspring to defeat Apocalypse, but then he ran into a bit of a problem when Jean seemingly passed away. She was actually just at the bottom of Jamaica Bay, so he created a clone of her, Madeline Pryor. She was the one who married Scott and had a kid with him, and then somehow, after that is when everything really hit the fan. Jean Grey appeared alive, Scott left his family, little Cable was kidnapped, and all records of him were erased from existence. A psi bond was created between him and his sister, Rachel Summers, from an alternate reality, and then we had that huge battle in New York where Madeline tried using all the littles to open up a portal. It didn't work. Then Nathan was kidnapped again and infected with a virus that couldn't be cured in the present, so obviously he was sent 2,000 years into the future. And then in the future he was cloned because they were worried they couldn't cure him after all. Apocalypse claimed to be that clone and kidnapped, I guess, baby him to raise to be a host body when he needs it. Cable just has all the spots on the Marvel bingo filled out. Time travel, cloned, super parents that were also cloned, evil self, kidnapped, and that is only the beginning. Being introduced to Eric the Red, and particularly his choice of outfit, is not something I will ever forget, because what is going on there? Scott Summers created this fake identity, Eric the Red, so he could infiltrate a villain organization, and that's fair, that makes sense, but then Marvel made a real Eric the Red that isn't Cyclops, but he wears the same outfit, and the outfits are very specific, so how did Scott even get it? There seems to be no correlation between the two other than the identity name, so whatever that means. Kang is mine, and now it seems the MCU's biggest headache. One thing seems to generally stay the same for him. Every version of Kang starts out as Nathaniel Richards. Where Nathaniel came from though, well, we have options. There was a Nathaniel from Earth 616 that brought peace to Earth 6311 when he traveled there. This made him a big deal. He was known as the legendary benefactor, but he wasn't the Nathaniel native to that planet, so another Nathaniel was eventually born. This Nathaniel was maybe descended from the great benefactor himself or Doctor Doom. This Nathaniel's history was messed up by another him, causing him to be a good guy for a while. Nathaniel grows up and is bored, so he travels back in time to Earth 616's ancient Egypt to be king. Eventually, he tries to return home, but is caught in a time storm and transported ahead to the 40th century, Earth 6311. The future is a mess. They are at war, and the people have regressed into barbarians. Nathaniel has found the perfect group to conquer. This is the first time he takes on the name Kang the Conqueror. He conquers Earth 6311, that galaxy, and then tries to attack Earth 616. He wanted more power, but there was also a historical record that said that eventually a celestial Madonna was going to give birth to the most powerful entity ever, and Kang wanted to be their dad. This was the confusing origin of one version of Kang, but generally considered to be the base Kang, kind of. There are a lot of things in the Marvel Universe that give me headaches, but Shatterstar's origin is really something special. The man is somehow the son and the father of fellow X-Men Longshot. How does that happen? Well, Shatterstar was sent back in time to the Mojoverse, which we will cover in a second because that is all so weird, but he was sent back in time. He was experimented on in the past, and his DNA was used to create Longshot, so therefore, he is Longshot's father. Years down the road, Longshot and Dazzler have a baby. baby, and that baby was Shatterstar. And guess what? Shatterstar helped deliver that baby. That makes Shatterstar Longshot's father and son and his own grandfather and midwife. Because Marvel can't seem to relax, they decided that Longshot and Dazzler would forget the pregnancy ever happened, and Shatterstar was launched 100 years into the future. The guy lived in Mojo World, a realm where TV basically controls everything. Shatterstar lived here for a long time, competing in arenas. It's where he learned to become a warrior. Then he escaped to Earth, where he was a founding member of X-Force, and then at one point we find out that Shatterstar was maybe split in half or just had a twin. His name was Benjamin Russell, and he was in a coma the minute his powers manifested, but looked exactly like Shatterstar and was his other half. The two were eventually combined, which left Shatterstar feeling whole again. So that's him. Marvel and DC have created some truly iconic origin stories known around the world, but they are also responsible for Supergirl's horse story and multiple people being their own grandfathers. So here we go. 10. DC's Byron, aka Comet, aka Supergirl's horse that she dated, and I'm being 100% serious about that. Supergirl's horse was a centaur in ancient Greece that longed to be human. He ended up saving the sorceress Circe, and as thanks she said that she would give him any reward. So he asked to be human, and she made the potion to turn him human, but she also made one that would turn him into a horse and accidentally gave him the wrong one. Why did she make both? There was no need to make both. Much later, when he was Supergirl's horse, he would shift from man to horse, and the pair fell in love. But he didn't tell her he was her horse, so she didn't know that she was dating her horse, and personally that would be my villain origin story. 9. Marvel's Vision. Like many heroes, what was relatively straightforward in the movies is wildly convoluted in the comics. Ultron created Vision using the first artificial man, the original Human Torch. However, it was later discovered that the Human Torch Ultron used wasn't the original. It was a temporal replica generated using the Forever Crystal. Vision wouldn't activate, and Ultron was forced to bring in the Human Torch's creator to fix Vision. The brain patterns of Wonder Man were used to do that, so technically Vision is the Human Torch and Wonder Man, while also not really being either. 8. DC's Phantom Stranger. He's led many lives. Literally, he was Judas, betrayer of Jesus, making him one of the greatest sinners ever. He was also a fallen angel who didn't pick a side during the Heavenly War. Another is he was Isaac from the Bible story, but not like exactly the same. This time his son passed because King Herod was looking for Jesus, and now Isaac hates Jesus and later tortured him. Another is that he was spared during biblical times, but he didn't want to be, and the angels didn't want to let him in heaven, so he just had to walk the earth alone forever. And finally, he was actually one of the last remaining parts of our previous universe. At the final curtain, he approaches those studying the end and then passes part of himself onto a new person, so when the universe is reborn, they get a Phantom Stranger. So I guess just like pick your favorite. 7. Marvel's Shatterstar. Shatterstar is the son and the father of fellow X-Men Longshot. So technically, he's his own grandfather, and also he's his own midwife. Shatterstar was sent back in time to the Mojoverse, experimented on in the past, and his DNA was used to create Longshot years down the road. Longshot and Dazzler have a baby, and that baby is Shatterstar. Shatterstar also helped to deliver himself. Marvel made Longshot and Dazzler forget the pregnancy ever happened, and Shatterstar was launched 100 years into the future. And this all isn't even covering Shatterstar's coma twin. 6. DC's Dula Dent. Her origin is confusing because she wants it to be. She is claimed to be the daughter of the Joker, Catwoman, the Riddler, the Penguin, Scarecrow, and Two-Face. She appeared in the Teen Titans comic series, and she was planned to be revealed as a time traveler that gets reality warped one too many times and driven insane, but the comics were canceled. She was later revealed to actually be the daughter of another universe Joker and Three-Face, a female variation of Two-Face. However, you never know what's real anymore, and it turns out neither can Dula. It's suggested that because her mind was warped every time she switches Earths, her consciousness switches slightly as well, which is why she named so many different parents. 5. Marvel's Eric the Red. Scott Summers created a fake identity, Eric the Red, so he could infiltrate a villain organization, which is fine, easy backstory. But then Marvel made a real Eric the Red that isn't Cyclops, but he wears the same outfit, and this outfit is very specific. You're not just gonna be picking that up at a store, so how did Scott even get it? There appears to be no correlation between the two other than their name, but oh my god, where did you come from? 4. DC's Hawkman. Hawkman has numerous backstories and never-ending lore, and that is because he is simply one guy that keeps getting reincarnated. But before we got that story good luck. The character was just like a little hard to keep up with, to the point where people started making very detailed guides on his specific timeline. There was also the fact that 2 Hawkman characters merged into one during the Crisis on Infinite Earths event. There were a lot of people also handling this character that didn't always follow each other's lead. The current story at least makes a little bit of sense. 3. Marvel's Kang. When it comes to where Nathaniel comes from, we have options. There was a Nathaniel from Earth 616 that brought peace to Earth 6311, making him the legendary benefactor, but he wasn't native to the planet, so another Nathaniel was born, possibly descended from the great benefactor himself, or, Dr. Doom. This Nathaniel's history was messed up by another Nathaniel, causing this Nathaniel to be a good guy for a while. He grows up, travels back in time to Earth 616, ancient Egypt, to be king. Eventually, he tries to return home, but is caught in a time storm, transported ahead to the 40th century Earth 6311. The future's a mess. Nathaniel has found the perfect group to conquer. That's when he takes on the name Kang the Conqueror. There's so many versions of him under a variety of names: Nathaniel, Kang, Immortus, Victor Timely, Prime Kang, and Kang the Conglomerator. 2. DC's The Question, and I'm gonna be real with y'all, I think about this origin story all the time. The Question at one point was a character thought to be a supernatural power. It was never really made clear. The story was that he committed a crime bad enough to be considered one of the world's greatest sinners, but we never learned his name. All we knew was the guy was obsessed with power and having his name feared by all, so as punishment, he got his face taken away and he can no longer remember himself or his name. This was introduced in the New 52. Previously, he was just the alter ego of Victor Sage, but then Flashpoint caused them to separate and even have brand new different histories. Apparently, that version is Narcissus, but I don't know why Narcissus would want the world to fear him, so I don't know. 1. Marvel's The Wizard. Of course he's here, practically the poster child for a video like this. A mongoose transfusion giving him super speed? Come on. His origin, goofy. His outfit, goofy. It's why you have to love him. Most accurate example of early comic science and design choices. In the end, to sort of make it make more sense, it was theorized that the mongoose transfusion actually just awakened a latent mutant ability.
Reed Richards, Ben Grimm, Susan Storm, and her brother Johnny were forever changed during an experimental spaceflight that exposed them to cosmic rays, giving them all superhuman powers and abilities. So to backtrack for history, during his time in college, Reed shared his dreams of space exploration with his friend Ben, and in turn, Ben pledged to fly any spaceship created by Reed. Susan was introduced to Reed when he was a house guest of her aunt, and through Sue, Richards met her younger brother Johnny. So, fast forward years later, Reed secured government financing for a new spaceship that could have potentially opened up interstellar travel for humanity. However, the government pulled its funding from the project shortly before Reed completed his work. Well, desperate to test the ship before it was dismantled, Reed, Sue, Ben, and Johnny broke into the official facility and launched an unauthorized flight. The mission was seemingly a success, but then the ship's shields failed to protect them from a massive dose of cosmic radiation and crashed back to Earth. Everybody survived, but then Reed found his body had taken on elastic properties that allowed him to change his size and length. Susan gained the ability to turn invisible, Johnny got control over fire, and then Ben's enhanced strength and durability turned his skin and body into a rock-like situation, which kind of robbed him of the ability to pass as a human. Despite the sudden turn of events, the quartet realized the potential of their powers, chose to become a team, quickly becoming media sensations and celebrities. Does any of that make sense? Cause we got 4 different kinds of powers from the same source? Nope, absolutely not. Do we still love them? Somehow. Cloud is without a doubt the proud owner of the strangest origin story the comic industry has ever created. Okay, well maybe the strangest Marvel story. This is in no small part because the name Cloud is quite literal, as Cloud started out as a space cloud, or a nebula. Given human form and sent to Earth by Cubic, a cosmic cube, the only not completely surreal part of Cloud's origin story is that her presence on Earth immediately caused a car crash. Significantly weirder is that in trying to heal those killed in the car crash, Cloud would instead take on one of their forms and gain amnesia, a fact that those who bore witness to her debut undoubtedly envy. She would later be brainwashed into believing she was human and given false memories of having human parents who died, as well as making her believe that a Russian secret agent was her sister. Although Cloud would eventually discover her true nature, and likely one of the wildest identity plot twists of all time, it's difficult to decide whether her fake or real identity is weirder, because both are kind of surreal in their own right. The Red Bee's origin story is so ridiculous that it's kind of hard to believe that he was ever taken seriously as a superhero. Richard Raley's reliance on a trained bee named Michael, whom he kept in a compartment in his belt buckle, is not exactly a recipe for success when it comes to crime fighting. It's hard to imagine how a bee could be useful in combat, even if trained. But despite the absurdity of his origin story, the Red Bee made a few appearances on the page of comic books, proving that even the dumbest of ideas can find a following. However, I think it's safe to say that the Red Bee's place in superhero history is more of a curiosity than a classic. Chuck Tane, also known as Bouncing Boy, has one of comic book history's most ridiculous origins. So after drinking a super serum, he could inflate and bounce like a bouncy ball. And while this ability might seem amusing and visually entertaining, it's kinda not really practical to fight crime with and save lives. But hey, despite the impracticality of his power, he's become a beloved character among fans of Legion of Superheroes. Allegedly. His cheerful personality and unwavering loyalty to his team have made him a unique and endearing presence. And while he might not be the strongest character out there, I guess he kinda proves that sometimes a little bit of humor and fun can go a long way in creating something memorable. You let me know in the comments what you think. It isn't particularly uncommon for a superhero to gain their powers thanks to brain damage. Like Cyclops, he struggles with controlling his eye beams thanks to stress and injury from growing up. But Flaming Carrot is another story entirely. In a move that breaks the fourth wall, as well as the most likable West Coast Avenger, Gwenpool, Flaming Carrot became a superhero after reading thousands of comics. And I think it was 5,000, which okay, I don't seem that crazy, but aight. So this decision caused him to have brain damage, leading the man to put on a carrot mask, set fire to the top of it, and set about with a tool belt that helps him along the way. Oh, and in case he needs to swim, don't worry, he's always wearing flippers. He's also got this ability to enter a state of Zen stupidity, allowing him to face dangers without hesitation or worry. It's absurd. I think it is kind of funny, and it kind of tackles some of the strange conventions of the hero genre, but why? Squirrel Girl's origin story is definitely up there with the more unusual ones. Her birth with a squirrel tail and the power to communicate with squirrels might seem strange, but it's become essential to her character's appeal. Her quirky personality and unique abilities have made her a fan favorite. Despite her seemingly silly origins, she's proven to be a noteworthy hero, defeating some of Marvel's most powerful villains. We're talking Dr. Doom and Thanos. Her triumphs have demonstrated that sometimes it's not the powers that make the superhero, but their ingenuity and determination. So sure, while her origins might be unconventional, her success as a hero is kind of a testament to the fact that anything's possible in the comic book world. And in the real world too. Armless Tiger Man's origin story is both absurd and offensive. Gustav Hertz was a circus performer who, lost his arms in a tiger attack, and then get this folks, he gained the ability to grow tiger arms from his shoulders. And the backstory kind of relies on the ableist notion that people with disabilities can only be heroic if they possess extraordinary abilities. And this offensive trope kind of reduces folks with disabilities to one-dimensional characters, who are only seen as inspiring because of their physical differences. Also, the idea of growing tiger arms from one's shoulders is both illogical and ridiculous. It's kind of hard to imagine how such an ability could be useful in any meaningful way, and it really only makes him this poorly thought out stereotype. The bizarre nature of Amy Winston, superhero alias Amethyst, kind of rests on one question. If you were a magical princess, when would you want your parents to tell you? Well, Amethyst only finds out the answer to this question when her mom takes her through a magical portal on her 17th birthday, at which point you'd think she'd have found a spare minute to tell her own daughter what was about to happen. The first edition of Amethyst's origin is really strange. It's very weird, starting with a normal family celebrating their offspring's birthday, and ending with a terrifying orc kidnapping her via an interdimensional portal, all within the span of roughly 3 pages, making it pretty wild. More importantly, while in the newer Prime Earth version, Amethyst is 17 years old, the older edition has her as a 13-year-old who takes on the appearance of a grown woman when in her superhero form, which raises some more questions. Are we being creepy, or are we Shazam knockoffs? After being hit by a cable car, Nightman was struck by the jump effect, which is a power granted by a moon-based alien species and given extraordinary abilities. So now he's got that night vision, he's got an ability to sense malevolent thoughts, so he's out to take on the world's wrongs. But there's something to be said for a character with a backstory so confusing, the moon-based alien species that gave him his powers, they're never fully explored. It'd be like, I don't know, if Superman failed to question his grandparents about Krypton. We're missing a key element, folks. Even though Nightman is from one of Marvel's strangest alternate universes, his odd history could be fun if you accept that you're never gonna get the answers that you kind of need. Color Kid's origin story isn't super duper impressive. Ulu Vac gained the ability to change the color of any object, object, but only once, which kind of makes for an underwhelming superpower that's hard for anybody to see being of much use in any fight against supervillains. And what makes his origin story even more ridiculous? He was a member of the Legion of Superheroes, a team of intergalactic superheroes who fought against various threats to the universe. I struggle to imagine how changing the color of an object, just once, would have been much help in such a big situation and important situation like that.
Wolverine. He's the very best at what he does, but what he does isn't very nice. But how did he get so good? And why is what he does not very nice? When we first got to know Wolverine in the comics, his life was shrouded in mystery. That was what made him such a fascinating figure. But like all good characters that have been around for 50 years or more, eventually his origin story had to come out. That's where we begin our journey through his history. His retconned origins, often referred to by the name of the comic it was featured in, Wolverine Origins. Wolverine was born James Howlett. He grew up in Alberta, Canada, and was known for being a rather sickly child. He grew up playing alongside his childhood companions, Dog, the son of the groundskeeper, a rough kid with a rough life, as his extremely mean father was often drawn to drinking, bouts of anger, and mistreating him, taking out his anger at the world and his place in it on his son. And Rose, a young girl who had been brought to the Howlett estate from the village to act as a playmate for young James, because she was around the same age as him. Rose had distinct red hair and ended up becoming James's first love. This was where his love of redheads began. James's powers manifested on one tragic night where both his mother and father had lost their lives in a dramatic turn of events. Seriously, it's like James's life, or the origins of it, was a soap opera. James fled the estate with Rose, escaping to start a new life elsewhere. Dog, however, would later follow after them, tasked with hunting down James at the behest of his grandfather. The traumatic events of the night when his powers first manifested caused James to lose some of his memories as a result. He and Rose settled down in British Columbia, and to disguise himself, James took the name of Logan so that he wouldn't be found. Although, I think Rose just kept using her own name. You would think that she would have changed hers too for safety, but I guess James was the only one that they were really concerned about being pursued at that time. I don't know. It was during this time that Logan also gained the nickname of Wolverine, because he worked like an animal. Get it? Like a Wolverine. Look, this is an origin story, so we have to tie everything neatly in together, okay? There have been other callbacks that have referenced why Logan goes by the codename Wolverine, but this is, I believe, the earliest mention of why that is in terms of his character history. Logan had developed feelings for Rose but could not act on them because the two of them had also chosen the cover story of being cousins. Instead, when she revealed she had feelings for another man in town, Smitty, Logan was forced to accept his unconfessed and thus unrequited love for her and decided to just give the couple his blessing. However, just when Rose and Smitty were gearing up to leave the mining town they were in, Dog found them. Well, found Rose and, of course, Logan, aka James, and another tragedy ensued where during a scrap with Dog, Logan accidentally killed Rose. Following this, Logan was even more traumatized and set out into the wilderness, giving in to his animalistic side fully and running with a pack of wolves for some time. It was during this time that he came across a genetically modified polar bear who slaughtered his pack. Avenging the death of his pack, Logan slew the polar bear in kind, which caused Nathaniel Essex to take notice of him. Because yeah, Nathaniel Essex had been the one who modified that polar bear. Nathaniel Essex later tracked Logan down and captured him, conducting experiments on the feral mutant. Wolverine would escape, however, with some help, only to end up captured by a circus where he was being displayed as a sort of circus freak. Once again, he was still pretty animalistic at this time. Also, I gotta say, the X-Men in general have a long and complex history with the circus. I could do a whole video just on that. There are so many circuses in X-Men comics, and this one in Wolverine's history is just one, honestly, of many. It was during this time at the circus that he'd run into Creed. Not Victor Creed, but his sister, Clara Creed, and her brother, also not Victor, Saul Creed. During this encounter, Logan and Clara would end up having a brief romance that ended in, you guessed it, tragedy. Like pretty much all of Logan's relationships do, sadly. Sorry, Wolverine. This time, Saul would end up dead at Logan's hands, which would later cause problems for Wolverine with, of course, Victor Creed, aka Sabretooth. Sabretooth would come across Logan after this when he'd settled in the Rockies, finding happiness with his then romantic partner, Silver Fox, after being accepted by her tribe. It was during this time that their dog Blue got rabies, and while initially it seemed as though Logan was forced to put the dog down, we'd later learn he was unable to bring himself to do it, and Silver Fox was actually the one to do the deed instead. Their time together was cut short by the arrival of Sabretooth, who was seeking revenge for his brother's death. This is because every year on Saul's birthday, Victor shows up to torment his brother. But with Saul no longer around, he decided to just transfer this treatment as punishment to Logan. So on Logan's birthday, Victor killed Silver Fox. Or maybe he didn't, but he probably did. The consistency of these events have become foggy over the years, likely as a result of Wolverine's memories being loosey-goosey when they involve trauma, and also as a result of them often being tampered with. Following these events, Logan would be manipulated into killing the people of the nearby town, apparently being manipulated by both Sabretooth and, retroactively we learn, Romulus. Romulus is one of the oldest Wolverine villains in addition to Sabretooth, but like I said, Romulus was much later retconned into this part in his history, so keep that in mind. Romulus is super important until all of a sudden he's not anymore, basically. Wolverine would travel the world taking up many professions. He would serve in the military, become a mercenary, and even study abroad in Japan, becoming a bona fide samurai. It was during this period that he worked alongside Ogun, Lord Ogun, who would later become a Wolverine villain, and the original Nick Fury, in addition to other famous figures from Marvel history. There's a lot of them, so I'm not gonna list them all, but just trust me. Wolverine's basically had to team up with everyone throughout his history at some point. He would also have other retcon run-ins written in later at this point with characters who would later become very important to his story, such as villains Bloodscream, Nuke, Cyber, and sometimes lover, sometimes ally, more often villain, Mystique. Eventually, he would once again find peace in Japan, studying under Bando Saburo in Jasmine Falls. He would also find love here, once again, with a resident of Jasmine Falls, Itsu. Itsu and Logan would marry and be blessed with a child, but before Itsu could give birth, she was killed by none other than Winter Soldier. Yeah, really everyone is tied in, you see what I'm saying? However, the child miraculously survived this due to him being the son of Wolverine, and was later taken by Romulus, who manipulated his origin so that he would grow up to despise his father. Romulus intended to use the boy named Akihiro, but he preferred to use the cruel nickname given to him by his adoptive parents and those around, who preferred to use the cruel nickname that was given to him when he was younger, Daken, as a weapon. Following this tragedy, Wolverine decided to join the Weapon X project. It was here that he would constantly have his mind wiped and be used as a weapon by the Weapon Plus program as a member of Team X, serving alongside Maverick, Sabretooth, and surprisingly, Silver Fox. Was it really her? Or a clone? Or something else? Was it an illusion? Those were just some of his team though, there were also other members, but those are a few of my favorites, so that's who I mentioned. If you thought Weapon X was bad, wait till you see where he went next. Somehow in the comics, Canada's military has always appeared to be even more evil than America's, as it was evident when he joined Department K, who also had ties to Weapon X. And I gotta say, as someone who is a Canadian, I'm gonna just say, I mean, I'm sure there's lots of shady stuff our government does, but I don't think they're that shady, so just so you know, FYI. It was during this time that Logan would be confronted with the truth by Sabretooth, something he'd suppressed for a long time. No, not that he was Sabretooth's son, although that was something that would be alluded to for years between them, but it's not really a thing, or is it a thing? But he would be confronted with the fact that he, Logan, was indeed a mutant. Logan mulled this over, escaping to the Yukon and drowning his woes in drink, but would later leave Canada after accidentally killing a fellow agent. Oops. Before he could leave, he was captured by Weapon X again and had his skeleton forcibly fused with adamantium. He would eventually escape Weapon X, which would lead to his first historical appearance in Incredible Hulk issue number 180. Before he appeared in Hulk though, he would meet the Hudsons, currently known as the superhero's guardian and nemesis, and be recruited to join Department H. Logan's fight against the Hulk would attract Professor X's attention, who would convince him to leave Department H and join his new X-Men team. It was here that Wolverine would develop a rivalry with Cyclops, a very intense one, in large part due to his feelings for teammate Jean Grey, who was Slim's girl. But also because I feel like, you know, Scott and Logan have some different ideologies in their life and how they approach vigilantism. From here, he would have a whole bunch of adventures with the X-Men, and he would become a super popular character. He'd become so popular he'd get his own limited solo series, which in turn would sell so well that would lead to his own ongoing series. Well, this series has been reset time and time again to the point that we're on volume 7 in terms of Wolverine issues throughout the character's history. We've actually had more than 1,000. His last legacy numbered issue was back in 2011, so we have to be nearing another milestone soon for him. If you want to hear more about Wolverine's history during his time with the X-Men and his solo adventures, which I'm very well read on, let us know in the comments. I love Wolverine and I personally would love to continue this history lesson with you, but there is is so much history, I cannot fit it all in one single video.
Welcome back, nerds. I thought that we would try something new and break down the fascinating stories of your favorite mutants, starting with one of mine, Dazzler. Did you know that she was originally planned to be a real-life person, and she almost looked completely different? The iconic mutant pop star was supposed to be real in both Marvel Comics and in our real world. Sources say that in the late 70s, a record company, widely reported to be the top of the food chain at the time, Casablanca Records, approached Marvel with a marketing proposition, a collaboration between the businesses to create a superhero superstar. The idea was Casablanca Records would hire a performer to play the part in real life, record the music, tour, and then Marvel could then release comics about their superhero adventures. It's important to note that this is right around the ending of the height of disco. Casablanca is at its peak though and is looking for the next best thing. The brainstorming of the character involved many people thanks to the cross-media nature of her. On the Marvel side, we had Tom DeFalco, John Romita Jr.'s, and Roger Stern. Marvel's idea for the character and Casablanca's plan could not have been more different from each other if they tried. On the Marvel side, Romita's first design is barely recognizable from the Dazzler that we know today, but is absolutely fabulous. He based her look on popular model and singer Grace Jones. The Jamaican performer was known for being bold with her fashion and taking over the music charts, often referred to as the Disco Queen, which was also Dazzler's original code name. Early art of the character shows that her costume design didn't actually change all that much, just some of the colors, and then also, of course, the person wearing it. Some Marvel fans believe that the original design for Dazzler was actually more appropriate for the character because disco as a genre started out in the US nightlife scene and is credited to people of color. So, how did we end up making such a drastic change to Dazzler's appearance today? Well, there were a couple factors. To start, we have, like the elephant in the room, but also disco was tapering off at the time and making room for the synth sounds of the 80s. So Dazzler's OG codename, Disco Queen, it had to be changed because the times changed. But the biggest reason for that change is due to a movie deal already planned out. That's right, Dazzler was going to get her own feature too. And at the end of the day, she's part of a long line of superheroes that are victims of movie studios and rights issues. So let's dive into that. The Dazzler film script is bonkers and too ambitious for its own good. But to start, Marvel writer Jim Shooter wrote a draft for her special for the studio Filmworks. The record contract, the designing of the character, and the film are all happening simultaneously, so there's a lot of cooks in the kitchen. Filmworks decided that they wanted Bo Derek to star as the mutant hero after she became the It Girl thanks to a starring role in the film 10, and this is probably the main reason why Dazzler's design changed so drastically to what she is today. But the kicker throughout all of this is the movie was obviously never made, and the recording contract fell through with it. So Marvel seemed to jump through all of those hoops to make these studios happy and redesign this character, only for it to not actually matter in the end. But the real, alleged drama comes from why the movie fell through. According to comicsarchaeology.com, Bo Derek insisted that her husband at the time, John Derek, direct the feature. He had some directing experience, he was an actor first, but none of his films were super overly well received, so Filmworks wasn't really biting, and they couldn't come to an agreement, so the whole thing was just completely thrown out. Presumably, context clues we're looking at here, because the film was scrapped, the record contract was too. Especially with disco losing its popularity as we headed into the 80s, of course, which is probably for the best considering Jim Shooter's script is available and wanted to feature Cher, Donna Summer, Kiss, Robin Williams, and the Village People, plus more probably. I don't think that Marvel, at its phase Avengers, Infinity War, and Endgame peak could get all of those people. So I am disappointed in the lack of Dazzler film, yes, but was it for the best? Probably. In the end, there was no reason for Marvel to not release Dazzler as a character. They already went through the pains of designing this really great version of her and revising it based on the movie. They might as well release her, and that is why Dazzler debuted with her own 42-issue series right out the gate. So in the end, we were robbed of a Dazzler in the real world, though I have to say Taylor Swift gets pretty close, or maybe even Sabrina Carpenter if you ignore the height. From a boy gaining super speed after a mongoose blood transfusion to heroes powered by bizarre accidents like drinking super plastic fluid, these tales push the boundaries of imagination and sometimes even absurdity. Here are some of the strangest superhero origins ever. Number 10, Shatterstar. I just thought that I would start off the video by giving everyone a headache. I just thought that would be fun. Shatterstar is somehow his own grandfather. There are a lot of things in the Marvel universe that leave me speechless, but Shatterstar's origin story is really something special. The hero is somehow the son and the father of fellow X-Man Longshot. Shatterstar was sent back in time in the Mojoverse, experimented on in the past, and his DNA was used to create Longshot, so therefore he is technically Longshot's father. Years down the road, Longshot and Dazzler have a baby, and that baby is Shatterstar. And just to make this even more insane, Shatterstar helped deliver the baby. So to recap, Shatterstar is his own grandfather and midwife, and Longshot's father and son. Now that's a disaster, so to keep the timeline intact, Longshot and Dazzler were made to forget that the pregnancy ever happened, and Shatterstar was sent 100 years into the future. Somewhere along the way, Shatterstar was either split in half or just like had a twin the whole time named Benjamin Russell. Benjamin was in a coma the minute that his powers manifested, but looked exactly like Shatterstar and was his other half. The two were eventually combined again. Number 9. Sam Wilson. Sam Wilson used to be a mobster named Snap, or did he? So we all love Sam Wilson, the Falcon, or Captain America in the MCU, and we all hate Red Skull because he sucks and does things like fabricating an entire fake personality for beloved heroes in order to discredit them and make them his pawns. Sam Wilson was one such hero. Red Skull used the Cosmic Cube to essentially create a mobster personality for Sam named Snap, and controlled him mentally via Snap. This was disastrous for the character because he already lived in a world where people hated him simply because of his skin tone, and now people have been led to believe that he really was a criminal, turning some of his supporters against him. It was Red Skull's intention to use public feelings towards darker complexions to discredit Wilson. In the end, everyone learned that Sam was never Snap, but the damage was done to an extent, and then topping it off, Sam ended up catatonic for a while, and then when he woke up, he went to trial because he did commit some crimes while under mind control. Nick Fury stepped in, and the charges were later suspended. Number 8. Cable. The son of Cyclops and Jean Grey, Cable's birth was orchestrated by Mr. Sinister after he discovered that the two X-Men would produce a super powerful offspring if given the chance, and Sinister wanted to use this offspring to defeat Apocalypse. The problem was, Jean Grey seemingly passed away before they could have a kid, so to fix that, Mr. Sinister created a clone of her, Madeline Pryor. She married Scott and had a kid with him. This is already giving like red strings on a corkboard, but somehow we're not done because we haven't even hit the time travel and resurrections. Jean Grey was actually alive the whole time, so Scott left his family. Cable was kidnapped and all records of him were erased. A psi bond was created between him and his sister Rachel Summers from an alternate reality, and then Madeline Pryor kind of crashed out, which you can't really blame her after your husband leaves you for yourself and then your kid is snatched. Madeline ends up passing away in the end. Then Cable was kidnapped again and infected with a virus that couldn't be cured in the present, so he was obviously sent 2,000 years into the future, and then in the future he was cloned because they were worried that they couldn't cure him after all. Apocalypse claimed to be that clone and kidnapped, I guess, like baby Cable to raise him to be a host body when he needs it. So to recap, Cable has had to deal with time travel, clones, super parent clones, an evil self, and a kidnapping, and that's only the beginning for this character. Number 7. Bouncing Boy. Early superheroes really were subject to the strangest origins. Case in point, Bouncing Boy. Bouncing Boy stands out in the DC universe for his just bizarre origin story. Unlike most superheroes who gain their powers through cosmic or scientific means, Chuck accidentally drank a super plastic formula that he thought was soda pop while distracted at a sporting event. This odd mishap transformed him, granting him the ability to inflate his body into a giant rubbery sphere like that girl from Charlie and the Chocolate Factory. He can now bounce at high speeds and ricochet off surfaces with surprising force and invulnerability. Initially, the Legion of Superhero founders were baffled by his desire to join, and he was even rejected. But Chuck proved his worth when his unique powers allowed him to defeat a villain that was immune to the other Legionnaires' abilities. A simple mistake with a bottle remains one of the weirdest and most endearing origins in superhero comics. Number 6. Black Bolt, specifically talking about his real name. Black Bolt's real name is Blackagar Boltagon. Now that is a name, for sure. Secret identity? We don't know her. Turns out Black Bolt didn't have a real name for a few decades after his creation. He was just Black Bolt, which I would argue is a more normal name than what he ended up with, but hey, he's not from Earth. One day, a Marvel writer decided that was not gonna fly anymore and decided to give this hero a real name. It was subtly revealed in Fantastic Four Annual 18 when Black Bolt got married to Medusa, whose name was also revealed in that comic then to be Medusa Lith, because again, why do you need a secret identity? Just put your name in your real name. The next year, Black Bolt's real name was really set in stone when it appeared in the official handbook of the Marvel Universe. Halfway spot number 5, Colossal Boy. Jim Allen, better known as Colossal Boy, was a young science police cadet enjoying a vacation on Mars when suddenly a meteor crashed beside him and gave him powers. The meteor's radiation altered his body at the molecular level, granting him the ability to grow to gigantic sizes at will, a power he first discovered in the middle of a crime chase when he suddenly shot up 15 feet into the air to stop a thief. This accidental transformation from ordinary cadet to superpowered giant is made even weirder by just the randomness of the event. A meteor, out of nowhere, just happens to land at his feet and rewrite his DNA. Unlike many heroes with carefully crafted destinies or inherited abilities, Colossal Boy's powers are the result of pure chance and cosmic oddity, making his origin one of the stranger stories in the Legion of Superheroes, which is a feat when it does come to that team. Number 4, Dynamic Man. Made and not born, Dynamic Man is a victim as much as he is a hero. Dynamic Man wasn't born human. He was actually created in a laboratory by the brilliant but horrible Professor Simon Goletter, who sought to build the perfect artificial human. The professor was really against any form of intimacy between partners, and in particular gay and interracial relationships, which mind your business, but he hated all of that and sought to make his perfect human. Brought to life by a surge of electricity, Dynamic Man emerged fully grown, equipped with superhuman strength, flight, and a moral compass that was fashioned off of the professor's. And of course, he was missing the anatomy that would help with procreation. His creator passed as Dynamic Man was coming to life because he was just too excited to see him, leaving Dynamic Man to navigate the world on his own, searching for purpose and justice. He could only help the people, though, that his creator didn't hate, which caused a lot of problems, all the ones that you might expect. And then he later lost his mind when he found out that he wasn't a real human and was actually a robot. Number 3, Freedom Ring. The once ordinary Chris Doyle stumbled upon a free, dumb ring one day and became the superhero Freedom Ring. Chris discovered a fragment of the Cosmic Cube, a reality-altering object of immense power fashioned into a simple ring. With this ring, Curtis gained the ability to reshape reality, but he had no training or real understanding of its potential. His journey from an everyday person to a superhero was marked by awkward missteps and a lack of traditional mentorship, making his story both weird and refreshingly relatable. Instead of a grand destiny, Curtis's path was shaped by luck, curiosity, and the unpredictable consequences of wielding cosmic power without a rulebook. Unfortunately, in the end, the hero was taken out by Iron Maniac, but he did get a lovely funeral and the ring was passed on to the Crusader. Number 2, the Golden Age Flash. This is one of my personal favorite origin stories. The original Flash got his speedster powers from hard water. That's right, the water that might just be running through your taps, the water that is simply just high in mineral content. It could give someone the power to run so fast they can reverse time. Technically, it was the fumes from the hard water that gave Jay Garrick his powers, but still, Jay Garrick was first introduced in 1939's Flash Comics 1. He was a brilliant student that had been working with hard water for years, specifically studying the gases coming from it. One night, while experimenting with separating the water's elements, Jay knocked over the hard water fume glass, and when he tried to clean it up, he fainted from exposure and woke up the fastest man alive. It's been suggested that this ridiculous origin originated from someone mixing up hard water and heavy water. Hard water is water with a higher mineral content. Heavy water is used in nuclear power plants, which makes it seem super mysterious. Heavy water isn't the most dangerous substance on Earth, but it can be slightly radioactive and it is denser, so it would alter someone's body chemistry. In real life, that means that you might just get a little bit sick, but in the comics, that means that you become faster than the speed of light. And finally, when it comes to strange origins, you cannot beat the Wizard. Bob Frank gained super speed after his father gave him a transfusion of mongoose blood to save him from a tropical virus. According to his backstory, Robert and his father fled the US, but in the new country, Robert caught a disease, and his father was unable to help him. In a desperate attempt to save his life, his scientist father injected him with mongoose blood after hearing local folklore about the restorative properties of mongooses. I mean, it worked, and it did miraculously cure Robert and granted him incredible speed. This origin is both memorable and delightfully odd. Honestly, the Wizard's origin story is somehow more famous than the hero himself. Despite his peculiar beginnings, the Wizard went on to become a member of superhero teams like the Invaders and the Liberty Legion, cementing his place in Marvel's golden age of comics. Is evil born or is it made? Today we are going to try and answer that question by counting down some of the X-Men's darkest villains and what happened to make them the way that they are. Hot off the press at number 10, we have a clone of Nathaniel Essex, one of the X-Men's most enduring and sinister foes. So sinister, he had no choice but to become Mr. Sinister. Originally a brilliant Victorian-era scientist obsessed with evolution and genetic perfection, Essex descent into villainy began after his wife, Rebecca, passed on, cursing him as sinister upon discovering all of his unethical experiments. Transformed and empowered by the ancient mutant apocalypse, Essex adopted the name Mr. Sinister and dedicated his life to manipulating mutant kind, most infamously through cloning, genetic experimentation, and psychological manipulation. Among his darkest acts is orchestrating the ending of the Morlocks, a peaceful underground mutant community, one of the X-Men's worst tragedies. Sinister's cruelty extended to manipulating Cyclops' life, kidnapping his son, Nathan Summers, later Cable, and erasing the existence of Madeline Pryor, a clone that he created, leading to the catastrophic Inferno event. In the modern Krakoan era, Sinister reached new lows by corrupting the mutant resurrection process, secretly implanting his own control over resurrected mutants, and attempting to seize control of mutant society, demonstrating his relentless ambition and utter disregard for life. Up next, at number 9, we have Victor Creed, aka Sabretooth. Sabretooth is one of Marvel's most notorious villains, infamous for his brutality and deep-seated rivalry with Wolverine. Born in the late 19th century, Creed's early life was marked by harm and violence and just really horrible parenting. Sabretooth's origin is further complicated by memory tampering from shadowy organizations like Weapon X, making much of his past just unreliable. His darkest moments are numerous and chilling. He ended Silver Fox, which was Wolverine's lover, and then manipulated an angry Wolverine and grieving Wolverine into ending an entire town of people. As a merc, Creed became known as the Slasher, ending indiscriminately for pleasure and sport. His cruelty extended to those close to him, and every year he would surprise Wolverine, no matter where he was in the world, for his birthday and just do something evil and diabolical. Silver Fox being the first of the many. Sabretooth's legacy is defined by his relentless savagery, psychological torment of Wolverine, and a history of betrayal and personal tragedy that cements his place among the X-Men's evilest villains. At spot number 8 is the diva that audiences were introduced to last year in Deadpool and Wolverine, Cassandra Nova. She made her big screen debut almost a year ago, but she has been causing problems since her 2001 debut in the comics. Cassandra Nova is one of the X-Men's most chilling villains, born as the Mumadrai, a parasitic psychic entity, at the very moment that Charles Xavier was conceived. She is, in essence, Xavier's dark twin, created from the same genetic material but embodying pretty much everything that he opposes. Even before birth, Cassandra's evil presence was so overwhelming that it triggered Charles's powers to try and eliminate the threat. Surviving this, she spent years reconstructing her body and plotting revenge. Later in life, Cassandra ended up orchestrating the use of Sentinels to end over 16 million mutants, an act of pure, calculated evil that proved that she is one of the most ruthless adversaries the X-Men have ever faced. Her combination of immense psychic power, deep-seated hatred, and utter lack of empathy makes Cassandra Nova a terrifying force. I think it's safe to say that in her case, evil can be born. At number 7 today, we have Madeline Pryor, one of Marvel's most tragic and complex villains. Created by the villain Mr. Sinister as a clone of Jean Grey, Madeline was engineered using Jean's genetic material and implanted with false memories, her entire existence designed to manipulate Cyclops, Scott Summers, into falling in love with her and fathering a child, Nathan Summers, later known as Cable, whose genetic potential Sinister coveted. Initially unaware of her origins, Madeline lived a pretty normal life, marrying Scott and starting their family. However, her world fell apart when Jean Grey returned, leading Scott to abandon Madeline and Nathan, which began her descent into darkness. The revelation of her true nature as a clone and a pawn shattered Madeline. Demonic forces exploited her pain and resentment and awakened latent psychic powers and transformed her into the Goblin Queen. In her darkest moment, Madeline struck a deal with demons to open a portal to Limbo, unleashing a demonic invasion on New York City. She attempted to sacrifice her own family, along with others, to cement her power to keep the portal open, but was ultimately stopped by the X-Men. Coming in at number 6, we have Donald Pierce. Donald Pierce is a notorious supervillain, best known as a cyborg and relentless enemy of the X-Men. Born into immense wealth, Pierce inherited his family's fortune and industrial empire, which opened the doors for him to join the elite Hellfire Club, where he rose to the rank of White Bishop. Despite his high standing, Pierce harbored a deep-seated hatred for mutants, joining the Hellfire Club not for power or prestige, but with the secret goal of exterminating its mutant members. His transformation into into a cyborg began after a brutal defeat at the hands of Cable, which left him grievously injured and dependent on advanced prosthetics, fueling his self-loathing and further intensifying his anti-mutant crusade. Pierce helped create and lead the Reavers, an army of cybernetically enhanced criminals whose sole purpose was the eradication of mutants. Under his command, the Reavers captured Wolverine, torturing him before Jubilee intervened to save that hero. Even after apparent deaths and defeats, Pierce repeatedly resurfaced, orchestrating evil actions and mass endings, cementing his legacy as one of the X-Men's most relentless and ruthless foes. At our halfway point, we have Selene. Selene, known as the Black Queen of the Hellfire Club, is one of Marvel's oldest and most powerful mutants, with an origin stretching back literally thousands of years. Born to a tribe that recognized her unique powers, Selene's mother passed at her birth, and the elders commanded the tribe to sacrifice themselves to the little Selene, allowing her to feed on their life force and become their sole survivor. Over the millennia, Selene has wandered the world using her psychic vampirism to sustain her immortality, and has been responsible for countless atrocities, including commanding an entire city by force, entire cities such as Nova Roma, triggering the eruption of Mount Vesuvius, and orchestrating wars for her own gain. Among her most notorious acts is the Necrotia event, where she resurrected millions of deceased mutants from Genosha, absorbing their souls to ascend to godhood and waging a war against the X-Men with her undead army. Selene's legacy is defined by her insatiable hunger for souls, manipulation of powerful organizations like the Hellfire Club, and a body count that ranks among the highest in X-Men history. In spot 4, we have Dark Phoenix. Not Jean Grey as like a whole person, specifically we're talking Dark Phoenix. Dark Phoenix is the villainous form of Jean Grey, a powerful mutant who becomes host to the Cosmic Phoenix Force, a vast nexus of energy. Jean's psyche is twisted and she transforms into Dark Phoenix, a destructive and uncontrollable entity. One of her darkest moments, and perhaps the most infamous, is when Dark Phoenix consumes an entire star to replenish her power, causing a supernova that destroys the Debari planet and annihilates their entire alien race. This act marked a turning point in her story, leading to her eventual sacrifice. Overwhelmed by the destruction that she caused and the threat that she poses, Jean chooses to save the universe from further harm. Dark Phoenix remains one of the most tragic and complex villains in the X-Men saga, embodying the struggle between immense power and the loss of self-control. Getting into our top 3 today, we have Sebastian Shaw. Sebastian Shaw is one of the X-Men's most dangerous foes. A traumatic event triggered the manifestation of Sebastian's mutant ability, the power to absorb kinetic energy and convert it into superhuman strength. Driven by ambition and intellect, Shaw quickly rose from humble beginnings, getting rich through his company Shaw Industries, which specialized in defense contracts and munitions. His wealth and influence led to his recruitment into the secretive Hellfire Club, where he ultimately seized control as the ruthless Black King, manipulating both mutants and humans to achieve that goal. He was instrumental in funding and advancing the Sentinel program, designed to hunt and end mutants, using his position to control and weaponize anti-mutant sentiment for his own ends. His ambition led him to betray and end rivals within the Hellfire Club. Despite frequent defeats and betrayals on his part, Shaw remains a symbol of ruthless ambition, manipulation, and the dark potential of unchecked power within the Marvel Universe. But today's runner-up is none other than William Stryker. Stryker is driven by a fanatical hatred of mutants that stems from a deeply personal and tragic origin. Stryker's life took a dark turn when his wife gave birth to a mutant son. Horrified by his child's nature, Stryker ended both the wife and son, then attempted to end himself but survived, and interpreted that as a sign that he was chosen by God to wage war against mutants. Okay, this conviction led him to become a charismatic televangelist and the founder of the Purifiers, a parliamentary group dedicated to mutant ending. He orchestrated the abduction and brainwashing of Professor Xavier, aiming to use his telepathic powers to exterminate all mutants, a plan that forced the X-Men to ally with their enemy at the time, Magneto, to stop him. He also attempted to publicly end Kitty Pryde on live TV, only to be stopped by law enforcement. Over the years, Stryker escalated. He was resurrected as a cyborg, led new incarnations of Weapon X, and oversaw horrific experience to create mutant-ending cyborgs and even Hulk mutant hybrids. Despite his evolving methods and occasional brushes with the supernatural and technological, Stryker remains defined by his relentless intolerance. And finally, in the top spot today is Magneto. Max Eisenhart, better known as Magneto, is one of Marvel's most complex and truly tragic villains. Born to a Jewish family in Germany in the 1920s, Max's early life was marked by the horrors of the Big Event during World War II. His His family was captured by the evil army and sent to the camps, where Max witnessed the ending of his loved ones and was forced to assist his captors in operating the camp's machinery, a trauma that caused the emergence of his mutant powers. After the war, he adopted the name Eric Lehnsherr and tried to build a new life, but tragedy struck again when his daughter Anya passed in a fire caused by an anti-mutant mob, an event that pushed him over the edge, and in a fit of rage, Max unleashed his powers, ending those responsible and cementing his path as Magneto, the self-declared protector of mutant kind willing to use any means necessary. His darkest moments include founding the Brotherhood of Mutants to wage war against humanity, acts of mass violence, and a willingness to sacrifice innocence for his cause, all fueled by the conviction that mutants must dominate to avoid the persecution he once suffered. Magneto's story is defined by loss, vengeance, and the enduring scars of his past, making him a villain whose actions are inseparable from the pain and injustice of his origins. What do you think? Let us know your favorite X-Men villain down below, or even your least favorite. Thanks for watching, and don't forget to like and subscribe. Bye, nerds!